Moving further into data analysis, we're going to now look at what kind of errors does Excel have. And when you do certain functionalities in Excel, you sometimes, if you have not put in the formula correctly, or if you have not directed the formula to the correct range to pick up data from, you could get some sort of errors. It's important to understand what are these errors and why do they come essentially, right? So the first one in this list is something called as div by zero error or divide by zero error. Each error is denoted as a hashtag. So a hashtag follows, precedes the error actually, and the name itself suggests what kind of error it would be. So this one is a divide by zero error, which would typically happen when you divide something by zero. You have something called as the name error. When you misspell a formula or a named range, you see this error. Then you have NA or not available kind of a data, which comes, it's an error which comes out when some data is missing, or you have passed on inappropriate arguments into what is called as a lookup function. You're looking for data, but you have misspecified the range, and hence you don't get the data out. We will look at lookup functions separately, but that's when you get an NA error. NA is not necessarily an error as such, but more importantly, a fact that the data is not available where you're looking at. Then you have something called as null error, which is incorrect range operators if you use them. Same correct formula, but incorrect operators that you've used within that. Then you have something called as a num error, which you see when your formula returns a value which is bigger than what Excel can represent. You have a reference error when one of the formula parameters is pointing to an invalid range. So let's say I added two columns and then by mistake I deleted one of them, right? So the third column where I've added the two will now point to a column that doesn't exist. So that would give you a reference error. Then subsequently you move to what is called as a value error, which is when you use text parameters to a function that accepts numbers. And then you have these hash values which occur when the contents cannot fit the cell, right? Let's look at how do you get these. So if you divide 1 by 0, if you put equals to 1 by 0, you will get this error. If let's say you're trying to put in the function sum and just leave it after SU and just press an enter, you'll get the name error. NA is something that we will look at in more detail. So it'll use another function that we will look at separately. But if it looks at data which is not available somewhere or a range which is not available somewhere, then that's going to create a problem. Null is, for example, I'm adding two different columns, data points in two different columns, but I've not put in a equals to a comma in between these two values, so it starts misinterpreting the data and hence throws out a null. If you multiply or take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and raise it to the power of a huge number such that Excel can't handle the size of the number, it will throw what is called as a num error. If you are adding 3 columns and let's say you delete the third column, that's going to give you a reference error. That's going to give you a reference error, and that's why the reference error comes out. If you put in text parameters to a function that uses numbers like sum ABCD with ABCD, it's going to throw you a value error. And if you're going to create a number like this, which essentially is a number 2.12414124321, so on and so forth, e raised to power 21, this is going to not fit the contents of this particular cell, so it gives you an error based on that, right? So these are the various errors that come out in Excel. Now, sometimes we might want to, so it doesn't look good if this error comes out, right? So if we get this error, we first want to find out whether it is an error or whether it is not an error. So sometimes the function might want to be checked for, is the output an error, right? So that's what we are trying to identify and answer. That's what we look next, which is where we bring in the functions isError, isErr, and isNA, right? Now, in a sense, what we are trying to identify or find here is the output an error? And the function obviously will say either true, it is an error, or it will say false, it is not an error, right? That's the output that you're going to get. You can use it elsewhere, but this first point of analysis to try and find out if there is an error, and then it throws out the answer, right? So let's try this out. So let's look at is error, and you plug in this error cell and see if it is error. It says true, it is an error. And then you can copy paste this across all the error functions that you see, and you keep